This is the Washington Report. Here's your host, Stevie Bridgewaters.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me on the Washington Report. I'm Stevie Bridgewaters. It has been 4 months since I've been able to have a conversation with all of you, and this could not be a more timely topic. And so joining me today, I have the CEO for the Council for Professional Recognition, Dr. Calvin Moore, Jr., and we're going to be talking about what should I say, our early childhood educators making a safe return to the classroom. So thank you for joining me.
I'm so glad to be with you, Stevie. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure. This is a subject that is near and dear to my heart as I work with younger children Monday through Friday, and radio just happens to be another passion of mine. So this whole thing about children returning to school, it has, what should I say, it has put people in a position of uncertainty. I mean, this whole COVID, this whole pandemic situation has put us all at a level of what's going on. And so with early childhood educators, what are we looking at?
So it's really a topic that's been on my mind for several weeks now as well, Stevie. You know, at the council, we promote improved performance and recognition of professionals in the early childhood field. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really delighted to talk to you about it, but we have been feeling the uncertainty as well as we've tried to support and be there for CDAs across the country. And we pulled together an advisory committee to help us, to provide us some insights and perspectives and best practices for early childhood professionals as they think about this reopening, which can be daunting for them, as you can imagine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, how about this? Before we get into that portion of it, it would be remiss for me not to allow you to let our listeners know exactly what a CDA is, what it means to early childhood, and then a little bit more information about that. So first, tell me what a CDA is, or what your CDA association is.
So the CDA is the Child Development Associate Credential, which we believe is the flagship credential that really prepares early childhood professionals to work in programs with young children, ages birth to 5 years of age. And we set policies and procedures for the assessment and the credentialing process. We also publish competency standards and other materials that will be used for credentialing, and we administer the assessment, the national test that every CDA takes in order to be awarded their credential. We've been awarding the credential for 45 years. In fact, Stevie, this year we're celebrating our 45th year of administering the CDA, and we've been the council's been around for about 35 of those years.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Awarded, get this, the number that we believe, we've awarded over 800,000 CDA credentials since the first one was awarded 45 years ago.
Oh my. Wow. That's pretty impressive.
That's right. That's right.
And so
I received my CDA in 1992. I think it's the first time we've had a CEO of the council
Actually with a CDA?
Go through the process. Exactly. Excited about that too.
Go ahead. Well, with the CDA, I understand that in early childhood there are, different steps and different levels. And so for a person to be credentialed with a CDA, how do they appear different within the world of early education, if you will?
Well, we believe that it's the best first step. For many years, we believed it was the entry-level credential for the field, providing a base level of competence. We require the CDA to have a high school diploma or a GED in order to sit for the credential. We also require them to experience 120 clock hours of training and have over 480 hours of actual work experience in the classroom working with the child that they're sitting for in the credentialing process. They have to prepare a portfolio I've already mentioned the exam that they have to sit for, and they have to have a verification visit. So we have a professional in our field go and sit with the candidate to observe them with children and to interview them about their experiences with young children. So it's a very thorough credentialing process. We're very proud of it. And certainly we are working on improving it every day.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I do have to share with our listeners, I am familiar with the CDA program, but I wanted you to be able to share that with our listeners versus
Absolutely.
them hearing me, because my end of it, I do not have a CDA. And I have to tell our listeners, it is an extensive process that these individuals have to go through. And, it takes a lot of commitment and a lot of effort on their behalf of those individuals who actually do have a CDA.
Absolutely.
And I think this process is a great process for those individuals who are unable to afford a university approach or have, made some, different life paths, if you will, but it is very affordable. It's methodic, and I think it is a great asset to early childhood educators to have some insight as to how, this whole thing works.
I agree with you. We certainly support alternative pathways, which is what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And we feel that the credential is accessible, right? It's affordable, it's accessible, and it really proves that the person embarking on the CDA has made a commitment to the field.
Right. And I have to say, those binders are no joke. Those portfolios, man, they are
right.
They are no joke.
Listen, let me tell you, Stevie, I still have my binder. That's just how difficult it was. I kept it in a very unique, special place. And after all these years, I still look at it from time to time. So you're absolutely right about that professional portfolio. Right.
Okay, so and Dr. Moore, let's get on to what we're dealing with today. Early educators and COVID-19, how we're looking at getting back into the classroom. So maybe you can, start that path for me, and I'll follow your lead.
Well, as I said, we've been thinking about this for several weeks now as childcare professionals all over the country, whether it's a director of a program or teachers within the program, thinking about how they can begin to reopen. So we pulled together an advisory group of CDAs in the field. Some of them have 29 years of experience. We have some newbies on the group. But they've been talking about how this can be done in a thoughtful and meaningful way. And I think that anyone thinking about opening up a center in the middle of the pandemic has to really think deeply about their capacity to do so. I know that state leaders across the country are thinking about how they are modifying licensing rules, whether it's ratios or establishing some other protocol for making sure parents are aware of all of the things that the center has done to welcome them back in the program. And then some programs, believe it or not, Stevie, are choosing not to open in the middle of the pandemic, which we have to respect that decision as well.
Yeah, I can fully understand that. Do you think that early childhood programs, i.e. employees, are facing the same kind of stressors that our public school and higher learning, universities and colleges are experiencing?
I think it's more stressful for the childcare professional because most of these businesses live on the margins. I mean, the profit margins are often very thin. I'm so concerned as a leader of the council that some of these programs may not ever come back. And so that's why we're trying to support them, giving them information, ideas, best practices about what they should be thinking about as they reopen. Because I'm not as worried about those corporations that are running childcare programs. I'm worried about the mom and pop childcare programs, the small community-based programs that often need a lot of support just to make things work from day to day. And you can imagine trying to figure out drop-off procedures, check-in procedures, reading temperatures as children come in every day, and then keeping up to date with all of the latest health questions from the CDC and other state health officials, just to keep on track of what's happening with the disease as it moves forward. I mean, that's a daunting task for a childcare professional to think about.
Right. And I'm glad you distinguished the difference between your big commercial entities and your mom and pops, your community-based programs, to include home care. I don't want our listeners to think that home care providers don't fall under this umbrella as well of responsibility. In
fact, Stevie, I'm hearing that parents may be choosing home-based providers more often now as they think about their children going back into a childcare setting. They're more likely to choose a family childcare provider these days. Are you hearing that as well? That's what you've been hearing.
I'm not hearing that as much in our area, in the metropolitan area, and I think maybe it's because of the work schedule that people in the DMV have, and I'm just wondering how much of that is, makes a difference. I do know that some parents still need those extended hours. They still have those obligations as they go into work. And in our area, it usually takes a two-person household working in order to sustain themselves in our environment or in our communities here in the DMV. But I was just kind of wondering how the Council for Professional Recognition, how do you reach those mom and pops? How do you reach those home providers? How do they find out about you and for resourcing?
Well, what's so surprising is that we really do reach about 300,000 people in our network. It's very expansive. And we reach them in a variety of ways. We have a monthly newsletter called Council Link that goes out to our network. Any of your listeners who are interested in getting any of our resources around reopening their childcare facility can reach us at cdacouncil.org. Right on the landing page, we have all of the work that our CDA Advisory Committee has done around reopening. And we also have these leadership and learning webinars where we've reached around 50,000 registrants from around the country. And these are center-based teachers, directors, family childcare providers, home-based, home visitors. So we have a wide network, and we're working it every month trying to get the information out there.
Now, does a person have to belong to the council to have access to these webinars? Or do they have to have a CDA? How does that work?
No, they don't have to have a CDA. We don't have members like a regular association. We're just a nonprofit organization with a commitment to our field. So people should, wherever they are working in the childcare profession, should feel comfortable and welcomed at the council.
Right. I mean, I appreciate this information. I had no clue that it was there, and I think that's one of the things that we're scrambling to do. There are so many different points of view and thoughts on this that it's overwhelming and it's confusing. I know that in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the licensing with the Virginia Department of Social Services, who themselves are overwhelmed, with questions. They say, well, do what the CDC says and do what the health department says. But then you go to them and they'll say, well, what did so-and-so say? So it's like a mulberry bush. That's one of my favorite references for everything, by the way, when you can't get an answer. It's like you keep going around and around.
Exactly. And we've been directing people to the CDC for information about reopening their centers. But you're right. They certainly can't bypass any licensing agency or health department in their local area. And we felt that we had to do something because of the mulberry bush effect, right?
Right.
That many providers, even when we supported the CDC Foundation's recent workshop or webinar on reopening, we found that most providers felt that wasn't enough, that many of their answers many of the answers given didn't really fit their situation. So we wanted to be sort of a backup for those providers who are still unsure about what they should do. And then we wanted them to hear from the actual people doing the work. A lot of these webinars are not led by family childcare providers or center-based providers, or even the folks that are most affected by licensing rules or the daunting task of opening up a childcare center. And so it's important for information to be relevant to the childcare community. And the only way to do that is to listen to them, because, Stevie, what I've learned is that the many childcare professionals around the country know what they need. They realize the issues that they grapple with. So we have to listen, pause, and reimagine how we get information out to them.
Right. And that's so much appreciated. I'm speaking today with the CEO of Council for Professional Recognition, Dr. Calvin Moore Jr., and we're talking about getting our early childhood educators to make a safe return to the classrooms or their programs. And you just hit on something for me, and it triggered in my mind. The big thing for small mom and pops and home providers are access to cleaning agents or having the proper PPE. You know, before it's almost like you have to overthink what you already know, but having access to these things, it's almost difficult to do in order to remain open, because we have to have those items in place in order to function and to keep our doors open.
That's right. One of the things that I've been encouraging, especially the community-based programs, is this idea around shared services. I think they should probably work together and form networks to buy these materials in bulk and then share them amongst the networks. I know that's working in some states where groups like local associations and other types of community-based support networks are getting together to buy that PPE material and sanitation materials in bulk and then distributing them within the network. I think that's the best way, because there's power in groups, and you could certainly purchase more when you pool your resources. And if you buy in bulk, then that material will last longer. And so that's what we've been encouraging folks to do as they think about reopening, to work together in groups to get the materials and equipment that you need.
Right, and I will concur with that. I know that sometimes other programs have a difficult time reaching out to one another because it's like my territory, you know, you're going to take my kids away and, you know, I need to get my enrollment. But I don't feel that as much since COVID-19. For me, reaching out in the community is something that, of course, I'm obviously doing now, but I want to provide people with that great resource and information. An area, and I don't know if you can help with this, an area where parents are finding difficulty is finding places that are open. Can parents go to your website as well to find out how to ask the right questions?
We do have some resources around that, and some we are developing, but we do have some resources around where parents can go to find a center or to find a center that has a CDA. One of the things that we're needing to work on is helping them locate childcare facilities in their area, but perhaps our mission is not to help them do that, but to have the right answers. To have the right questions to ask when they do choose a center that they may be thinking about as people begin to open up, because they do need to be asking about how they have prepared or how they've changed their protocols in light of COVID-19. So there's some specific things they should be inquiring about when they make the decision to send their child back into a child care facility.
Yes, absolutely. And I think for mom and pops in small places, when you were talking about numbers, that's a huge thing, because some reservations for the next school year may have already been made earlier in the year, and now the numbers are changing as far as, what you can do. But the language that always perplexes me is to the best of your ability. Do this, but if you can't, do it to the best of your ability.
Well, we've been asking childcare providers to hold virtual meetings before they open.
Okay.
I think that as much as they can invite parents who are thinking about coming to their facility, sort of a virtual open house, so that they can inform parents about how they've managed to reopen and what protocols may have changed. Because this group that we talked to, Stevie, they talked about giving each child their own supplies, removing items that are highly touched in the center during the day to make sure they're sanitized, keep asking parents to keep personal items at home and not bring them into the center. They may have changed the way they're distributing meals or snacks. So all of those things can be talked about before the child actually comes. And so holding these virtual open house meetings as they prepare to reopen is really essential so that parents know what to expect when they do decide to take the child back.
That's extremely important, that line of communication, so everybody is on the same page and understands clearly. Now, there are some who are choosing not to return, and they're trying to make it manage and work in their home to the best of their ability. And I think for me, if you can keep your child home, please do so. If you're that uncomfortable, don't feel pressured to bring them back. Is that the great approach for our families?
I think so. I think families should make choices that really work for them. And if they choose to keep their children at home, they still need to think about a plan to make sure the child is learning and growing and developing in all the ways that we hope they will in any child care facility. And so we're also helping programs think about how they can continue to offer some of those virtual experiences from the center at home, and thinking about what the price points might be if families who are choosing to keep their children at home, but they still want to remain connected to the center and receive some of those services. We're also thinking about lifting up from our end the home visitor CDA, because that person takes the program to the family. And so some programs are thinking about preparing and facilitating that curriculum by taking it to families instead of the child having to come to the center. So they have to really be creative and think about all those creative ideas and how they might be able to pull the trigger on some of them and still meet the demands of the family.
Right, and so I guess the classroom will look a lot different too. At this level with the preschoolers, if you will, touch is essential. Hugs are essential, and we can't do that.
Even facial expressions are essential, right? I really worry about a teacher having to wear a mask all day because the infant-toddler depends on those facial cues. And so the world has really changed. Everything we know about child development has changed because of COVID-19, especially when the infant can't even see the face of the provider because of all the protective gear that they have to wear these days.
Yeah, it's so strange. It is so strange. Children are going to learn how to, I guess, through song and play. Do you provide those kinds of resources on your council site? And we'll have to give that again. Oh, yes.
We have a lot of fun ideas around or curricula, fun games that they could play. This CDA advisory group has really done a great job. If you go to our website, you'll see all of the ideas around how to best sanitize your classroom and prepare it for the families coming back in. I mean, some really in-depth information, but they have also included some fun ways to make the learning fun and while demonstrating this mask etiquette that we have to do. But yes, we haven't forgotten all the songs and games that children love when they come to preschool.
Now,
You'll
what
find
is
that
your?
there as well.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. What is your site again?
It's cdacouncil.org.
Okay, so I need our parents and our actually educators to know that, because, like you said, people are trying to reimagine, reapproach, reset how they're going to, provide care and fun for their children. And I don't want our educators or our people who are reopening, I need them to remain cautious and optimistically cautious. Don't become arrogant about this in any way, shape, or form. And, we need to take our time. And the communication with parents is essential.
Absolutely. I mean, the main idea, Stevie, is for folks to stay safe as their community reopens. I mean, families are in a bit of disarray. Our childcare community is in a bit of disarray. But our main message is to stay safe as you open and reopen, because safety and health and having all of those considerations as a priority is my main concern.
Right. And, one of the things that I like to do is give the high five across the room. Normally you say give me a high five and you touch hands, but I have to do that across the room now.
Exactly. And can you imagine the stress that families and children are dealing with? And even a teacher who's welcoming a classroom, even if it's a smaller ratio, it still is a bit stressful to be working in the environment, in the classroom environment in the midst of COVID-19. So not only does a center director have to deal with the stress that families are feeling, they have to also be mindful of the stress that their staff are feeling coming back to work.
Right. And that's a tough one.
Yes.
I do have a little song that you guys might be able to pick up for you. It's a hand washing song. It's one we've done for years. It's tops and bottoms, in between, fingertips and nails, wash them clean. See?
Oh, that's a wonderful song.
Yes.
You should record it for us so we could place it on our website.
You sing it a little slower so you can get in the 20 seconds.
Or you might have to sing it twice to make sure that they washed good.
And for our little children, and this is where parents can help at home as well. We need to constantly wash those hands, because at home we're not washing them as often. I just
That's
have this
right.
thing. So we have to get our children in the practice of knowing if, our finger goes on our face or in our nose, we got to go wash our hands. We got to go wash our hands. Because I know that they're doing that in the centers as much as possible and staying on top of that. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our educators as they get back into the classrooms?
No, I just want to thank you for this platform. We at the CDA Council want all of those childcare professionals around the country and your listeners to know that we're here for them. So I hope they'll visit our website, become part of our network, and we are going to support as much as we can. They're thinking about how they can reopen. So please allow us to be a resource for you. So looking forward to hearing from them in the future. And thank you again.
Absolutely. And, as we continue on through this pandemic and the changes that arise, I would like to keep the door open with you and your council to be able to keep our educators, our preschool, our early education, childhood professionals, in the loop of any changes or any ways that they can approach a classroom or their center as a whole or their home-based for our community-based programs. Does that sound like a plan?
Absolutely. We're here for you too, Stevie. So let us know what we can do to support you.
Okay, thank you. As I always say to our listeners before wrapping up, staying in touch to keep you in touch, although differently, here on Intercom Radio DC.